English translation 340th contact. Wednesday, 19th of March 2003, 0.20 hours.
Oh, you come back to the office and you are surprised. Just had to rush over there to take my medication. But this is actually a surprise, because I really was not expecting you, dear friend. But you are most welcome, and it is a very special pleasure for me to welcome you here. Ah, I see. You have the statutes and bylaws with you. They are probably the reason for your coming.
Be greeted also, dear friend. Yes, it is of correctness, because actually, I came here to work through the statutes and articles with you, which will take some time. For my part, I have gone through the whole thing and found some shortcomings that still need to be corrected. I will explain everything necessary, and when we have discussed everything, you can add the necessary notes.
Then you have not written any notes yourself?
No, because on the one hand, I want to discuss the points with you first, and on the other hand, you can make the insertions according to your own formulation.
As you wish. Then we can start now.
With this, we have done what is necessary.
It took more than 112 hours after all.
Such work takes a lot of time.
Tell me about it, my friend. I often wish the day had not only 24 hours, but 50 hours. All the time, I do not have anywhere to go to do all my work.
It goes similarly with me, because there is always so much to do, that you always fall behind with everything.
Lazy people and chronic idlers do not have this problem, because they prefer to indulge in the pleasures, frivolous behaviors and twiddling their thumbs, and let the good Lord be a good man, as they say in this country. If you understand the meaning of this saying.
I know this saying because I remember that you used it in earlier years.
Ah, also right. Is there any news about Ptah?
He reported that many new things were discovered which are unknown in our universe and which must have developed and changed and dissolved at the earliest times. The calculations showed that the foreign universe in its total existence is 22,022,000 years younger than our Dern universe. The material belt, and thus the visible material universe, has a current age of 9,009,000 years and is therefore much younger than ours. Apart from microorganisms, diverse small life forms, and a planet with primeval human life forms, and all kinds of small, medium, large, and very large animals, as well as air and water beings, no highly developed life forms have yet been found, by which I mean beings of the human species. Probably it will still take a long time before such life is found. As has been shown by the discovery of the primeval human forms, highly developed beings must therefore also exist.
Let us be surprised about what else turns up. Have you actually created a name for the foreign universe yet?
A provisional name was given, but in the meantime, according to Ptah's proposal, the name Radern Universe has been established for the foreign universe.
I see. What does this designation mean?
Of course you cannot know that. The term Radern refers to the abbreviation of Rane Alinu Dajansini Ern Ruan Nitra Pralano.
Right, very interesting. But I am standing like a donkey on a mountain, because apart from Dajansini, which means creation, and Nitra Pralano, which means unveiled, everything is like a bohemian village to me. Unfortunately, I cannot understand more. And how is everything written?
I understand. In our written language, all nouns are written with capital letters, as is every word at the beginning of a sentence. You can take the German written language as a model. The name Rane Alinu Dajansini Ern Ruan Nitra Pralano comes from the old language of Nocodamian and means new foreign creation that unveils itself.
I got it. But if I may ask you about the impending war in Iraq, what is there to say?
Unofficially, it already began yesterday, the 18th of March at 16, Nirilohurst, because the American-British troops have already invaded the demilitarized zone between Kuwait and Iraq. While beyond this zone, Iraqi defensive positions have already been destroyed with bombs and rockets, and soldiers have been killed. Yesterday was already the actual start of the war, for the invasion of the zone in question alone corresponds to an act of war. However, this is denied by the Americans, so they will not officially admit the start of the war until tomorrow, when they will fire rockets at the Iraqi capital, which will be at 0333 HRs according to European time, and around 2 hours according to Iraqi time, at 0533 HRs. Then in the evening, there will be more bombardments and rocket launches on Baghdad. This will also trigger the actual major attack. So then, the American and British troops from the demilitarized zone cross the border into Iraq without first encountering much resistance. This will change quickly. However, when everywhere the evil war really breaks out, even suicidally and guerrilla-like, because fanatics of other Islamic states and the Iraqi army and population will offer bitter resistance. It will be an unparalleled disaster and a course of war that will not only bring a real catastrophe to all the humans involved, but also to the whole world, and the hatred against the war powers of the USA and Great Britain will take on enormous terrorist dimensions worldwide. For the Americans and the British, the war will become a farce, and for all of humanity as a whole, a humiliation, because it will be powerless and impotent to watch the war crimes of the Americans and the British without being able to do anything about it. Unfortunately, earthly humankind is not yet so united and connected that it deposes its criminal rulers and sends them into exile, because it is still of the mistaken belief and action of the fact that the war criminal and murderous leaders would allow themselves to be influenced by senseless peace demonstrations. Humankind on the earth has not yet reached the point where it acts in a logical manner, deposing its fallible rulers and replacing them with truthful, honest representatives of the people. Meaningless big words and calls for peace at peace demonstrations are only useless, as it has always been the case from time immemorial. Only the true deed counts, and that is founded in the unification of all peoples in their sense of creating true peace on the earth, which can only be achieved by removing the criminal representatives of the people and replacing them with true humans. And with regard to what is happening in Iraq, unfortunately, it will be like the first Gulf War, with Saddam Hussein's order to senselessly set fire to oil wells and oil ditches. This war in Iraq, like all wars before it that have been fought and continue to be fought among the peoples of the earth, represents an evil and tremendous defeat for humanity on the earth. And since the atomic bomb and all other weapons of mass destruction were invented, as such weapons were, already used in the First World War in the form of poison gas, humankind on the earth has been driven to ever greater defeats by acts of war. Weapons of mass destruction are not only the A, B, and C weapons, but also rockets, bombs, and radiation weapons, as well as sound wave weapons, which should be or must be banned worldwide in all states and in all terrorist organizations.
That is a true word. For my part, I think that this U.S. President Bush and his war cohort, Tony Blair and his supporters, and the competent and irresponsible leaders of Japan, Australia, Spain, and all those countries involved in this war must be placed on the same level in every respect as Osama bin Laden, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Milosevic, and all other similar individuals who have ever existed on Earth, or who are currently functioning, or who will continue to function in the same manner in the future. And all those, as has always been the case with all war criminals and criminals of humanity, who are involved in this war in Iraq in any wise, however small, are committing a crime not only against the Iraqi people, but against all of humanity. The whole thing can no longer be described in a placatory way as a reprehensible act under international law, but only as an immense crime against all humanity. Even if the ruling autocratic and unscrupulous war criminals of all the states involved are subjectively convinced of their deeds and actions that everything is right, objectively there is no right for them to act in this manner and thus to wage this murderous war. The whole thing represents, as never before, a threat to the fate of all earthly humanity. All those involved, no matter of what kind, are guilty of carrying out humanly unauthorized attacks on innocent humans and accepting their death just to achieve their criminal aims. All of them are driven in their ideas and delusions by fear, obsession, fanaticism, cowardice, contempt for humanity, and self-importance. Therefore, they ignore everything that does not conform to their own opinion and not to their own profit. And once they have started their madness, they are not big enough and much too cowardly to go back. Thus, with their deeds and actions as well as with their delusions, their self-importance, their inhuman scorn, and their unscrupulous and unconscionable arrogance towards life and their self-elevation to a god, they all put themselves on the same level with all other capital criminals and criminals of humanity that have ever existed on the earth.
Some of whom you have met in the past.
I did, yes, like, for example, Saddam Hussein, whom I met with 2 of his doubles in Iraq. It is precisely in this respect that I do not understand why his doppelgangers are not recognized as such. Because Saddam has an unmistakable, unfailing characteristic, as I noticed at the time and as I have told you before.
That is unknown to me. I cannot remember such an explanation on your part. What could it be?
It was on my birthday, the 3rd of February, 1989, when we talked about the future and also talked about the Second Gulf War, and thus also about the warmonger Bush and Saddam Hussein. I know this very well because I am currently dealing with our conversation at that time. Saddam Hussein, if I remember correctly. Yes, I think it was under his right eye. He had a small birthmark. And when he got excited, which I experienced with him, then everything twitched around this birthmark and around his right eye. And that has certainly not gone away since then, so it must still be like that today, and he must be recognizable through it.
I am not able to judge that, because I do not know him personally, and could not make such a statement. All your words are of truth. It remains to be said that George W. Bush built the Iraq War on the lie that is obvious to the rational mind that the entire United States of America is threatened by Saddam Hussein. This is a tissue of lies of such horrendous dimensions as has never been seen on the earth in the history of humankind. Through this deceitful and infamous tissue of lies, not only the majority of the American people are and will be deceived, but also all those rulers and supporters of other states who creep around Bush like slimy creatures and, full of fear and cowardice, vie for his favor, which he grants them until he no longer needs them, or declares and warns them as enemies himself. The American and British war of aggression is and was justified by the tissue of lies about the alleged danger that Saddam Hussein is supposed to pose. A war that, like any other, violates every international law and morality, as well as human dignity and the right to life of every single human being. Neither America nor England or any other country has the right and legitimate reasons to drive a dictator or other despot from his position of power by acts of war. But whoever does so, nevertheless, is undoubtedly himself or herself a despot, dictator, and terrorist who does not belong in the office of a state leadership. War has in fact never been a means to solve political or religious problems, disputes, etc. Problems of this kind and disputes can only be overcome by rationality, understanding, wisdom, and love, and indeed even then, when gay vault samaga vault los ich kite, German terms that are not translatable but roughly mean powerful actions of logic and rationality, are brought to bear. This means, for example, that the people depose an unfit, irresponsible, murderous, unscrupulous, and autocratic ruler by the power of their unity, and send him or her into a controlled lifetime banishment, where he or she can no longer exercise any power. This would also have been the way for Saddam Hussein, but it would also have been the way for the U.S. mighty Bush, the British Prime Minister Blair, Osama bin Laden, and all those self-important and irresponsible ones who go along with those who believe themselves to be God.
You speak entirely in my sense, my friend.
It cannot be otherwise, because reason and the right consideration of things do not allow other conclusions and explanations. But now, dear friend, I have to go back, because I still have important tasks to perform which I cannot neglect. Goodbye. And should it come about in time that I find the opportunity to visit you again, then I will do so. It is always a special pleasure and honor for me to be able to talk to you. Farewell, and be of good cheer despite the evil in Iraq. Unfortunately, all peace-loving people cannot change anything about this catastrophe.
Goodbye to you too, my friend. It is always a great pleasure for me to welcome you and to talk to you. Salomi.